Hi everyone, I welcome you all into this Dell Boomi session. So, in this session, we are going to talk about integration with Salesforce, which is very important use case. Whenever you are going for any interview or even you're working in real time, you will see integration with Salesforce is a very common use case you might come across, right? So, just if you recall, what did we do in the last session, guys?
Deployments.
Yeah,
Extensions.
yes. So, in the last session, we talked about uh, extensions, right? And before that, we talked about deployments, right? So far we developed a process, right, which was kind of reading the data from a file, and then we were trying to push it to the database, right? So what we needed to do is, while we deployed the process, we had to package the process, isn't it? And after packaging the process, we were supposed to,
Deploy the process.
right? And when we do the deployment, uh, there are different environments which are possible, right? What are the different classifications of the environment we have?
Cloud.
Test and prod. Test and prod.
Test and
Okay.
prod. There are two classifications of the environment, test and prod, and you can create n number of environments, but those environments will either fall into test or prod, and these environments will have some runtime, right? That runtime can be atom, that runtime can be molecule, that can be atom cloud, test atom cloud, right? Private atom cloud, anything, right? So we saw that. Apart from that, then what we try to understand is when we move the same code from one environment to another, there is a need to make certain properties configurable, right? Can you give me an example? What are the few things which you would want to make configurable so that you don't need to make the change in your actual process, but still you can run the same process in different environments?
Connections.
Okay, so one may be the directory
Cross-reference
path,
table.
connection details, right, for any connector, right? Cross reference table, very nice. We will also see that we might need to do it for dynamic process properties also, right? So there are many other things, but yeah, you are right. These all things we might need to make configurable so that we can move or migrate our code easily from one environment to another. So I hope we understand things so far, right? So now I'll just put a pin on the process we have been working on. We will revisit it. We are yet to enhance the error handling, right? But just wanted to bring in a new system of, system of records, which is nothing but Salesforce. So Salesforce has multiple offerings, right? So the one which we are going to talk about right now is Salesforce CRM, right? It is based in, it is a cloud-based offering which helps the enterprises to maintain and manage the customer related info, right? So now, when you're working in real time, right, you will work with different SaaS applications, right? So Salesforce can be one. You might have to do the integrations with NetSuite. You might have to do integration with SuccessFactor or maybe Workday for that matter. But if you just understand the fundamentals, while doing the integration with one SaaS application, majority of the concepts remain same. Okay, there will be few differences here and there, but I would say 60 to 70% of the fundamentals remain same. 30% of the things are going to vary from one SaaS application to another, right? So please focus on, but when I'm explaining this, when you're trying to understand this, you have to understand each and everything about this, right? So what happens is Salesforce CRM is a cloud-based offering from Salesforce where we can maintain and manage the customer related info. That's fine. Now you have to understand, first of all, if it is a cloud-based offering, then do we need any installations to access the CRM? Ideally, no, right? We just need the internet connection and the valid credentials, right? So now the question is, how do you get the valid credentials, right? So when you're working for any customer, right, they will provide you all these details. But now when you're learning the subject, right, you're part of some training. So you may not have these credentials. So you have to always go and look for any kind of a developer account. And this is not only valid for Salesforce. Even when you, let's say, tomorrow do integration with ServiceNow, so you have to see, is there a possibility to create some kind of a developer account or a trial account, right? So if there is a developer account, you should always prefer that. So what we'll do is we'll go here and just we'll type Salesforce developer account. Okay. So once you type on the Google Salesforce developer account, there is an option sign up for a Salesforce developer edition. Don't go for a trial account, go for a developer account, because trial accounts are not API enabled. Okay, why we are not creating trial accounts? Because trial accounts are not API enabled. And if any account is not API enabled, we cannot achieve integrations. We can use the CRM, but we will not be able to integrate that instance of the CRM with the third party. So for any integration to happen with the Salesforce, that has to be API enabled. Your developer accounts are API enabled. Just fill in your details here. Okay, it works with the Gmail also, and just sign up and you will have your own username, password. And the good part is this is not going to expire. Trial account is going to get expired after a few days, but your developer account does not get expired as far as I know. So this is going to help you. So I've given the link also in this notepad. You can use same. If you already have some Salesforce instance, you can use that. But I know many of the trainees are new in my batch, new to the IT world. So I hope this will help you to create a developer account for the Salesforce, right? Now, once you create a developer account, you can log in into the Salesforce. So Salesforce CRM has two different views. Okay. One is called as classic view and another is called as lightning view. Okay. So how does it look like? Let me show you now. So once I log in, okay, let me log in from start so that you understand it. How does it look like? Okay, so how do you log in? Again, that is important. So you just write login.salesforce.com. That's all. Okay, login.salesforce.com is what you have to log in into. Now, when you're working in real time, right, there are two different Salesforce instances you can have. One is sandbox, right? Another is production box. Please understand this. You might have to do integrations with sandbox also first, right? Because when you're working in the dev or QA environment, you will not have the production box, right? You will have the sandbox, right? Sandbox is ideally either the replica of the production or part of the production is present in the sandbox. And that is basically used for development or testing purpose. So the login URL for that will be typically test.salesforce.com. Okay. This is for prod and this is for sandbox. Now, a lot of people I've seen, they are doing integration with sandbox and they keep on giving this URL and their connectivity doesn't get established. And this is the reason why it doesn't get established. So please make a note of it. And depending on the fact whether you're doing right now the integration with production box or a sandbox, you can decide which URL to be used, right? So in our case, this is more like a production box. So we are here, we have to give the username and the password. So my username is Dell Boomi videos by Sumit Agarwal @gmail.com. And I'll give my password. Okay. So I will add these details later on. And this is how the landing page will look like. Okay, this is kind of a home page. Actually, you may not see the same page as the home page because maybe this is the last page I opened. That's why it is showing me this page. But you may not see the same page as the home page. You might see something like, let me show you. Okay, you might see something like this, the one which you see right now. So right now we are working. So there are different personas who can use this Salesforce, right? So as the name suggests, sales plus force, right? It is mainly, it was mainly started for the, for helping the sales team, for equipping the sales team with more robust system so that they can carry out their operations more effectively, right? That's why the name is sales plus force, right? So right now we are into the sales persona, right? There can be marketing persona also, right? There can be a few other things also, but right now the major one which is used is sales, right? So so now here, if you see, there are different options like opportunities, leads, tasks, files, accounts, contacts, campaigns, dashboards, reports, and likewise you can have more. Okay, so right now there are, if you go to more, there are groups, calendar, people, cases, forecasts, and not only this, even you can have further more. Okay, so what are all these things you have to understand? So whenever we store any information in Salesforce world, right? So the information is stored as records. Okay, the information is stored as records. Would request everyone to be on mute. uh, and where do these records lie? So these information, whatever we are going to store, is stored as records, and these records are part of different objects. These records are part of different objects. So you can think of objects is more or less like a table, not exactly table, but more or less like a table of your database world. In your database, relational database management systems, right? Like Oracle. So you had some table, and within table you had some records, right? Similarly, in the Salesforce world, you will have objects, and within objects you will have records. So there are two types of objects: standard objects and custom objects. And when I'm explaining you all these things, you have to understand the same concept will get applied to other SaaS offerings also. Maybe instead of calling objects, they might call that as a table or some other thing, but the concepts are more or less similar. So what I'm trying to say is, when we store some information, we store in the form of records, and these records are part of different objects. Objects are pretty much like tables, right? And there are two types of objects: standard objects and custom objects. Standard objects, what are these? Which are these one? These are the ones which come, which are by default created by Salesforce and come packaged with the offering. So once you purchase the licenses for Salesforce, these objects are by default there. You don't need to do anything. So these come with the vanilla offering, right? So I don't know how many of you are aware, but we use this term, right? Vanilla offering means which comes out of the box, where you don't need to do anything. But when you purchase certain licenses, you automatically get these objects. Now, these objects, some of the examples of these objects are accounts, contacts, leads, opportunities. These all are standard objects, right? I'll let you know how to identify whether this object is a standard object or not. Okay, don't worry about that. But these objects sometimes may not be good enough to cater to the business requirement. Okay, we might see that like my business use case calls for a different need altogether. Okay, these standard objects are not going to help me achieve my business use cases. So then we go for custom objects. What are custom objects? These are the one which are
Created.
manually created by developers, right? These are manually created by developers based on the business need. right? So you can create any object. So for example, there is a by default object accounts. Right now, you also have a need of accounts, but what you observe is the accounts which come by default with the offering is not going to take care of your business requirement, right? Then what you might need to do is you might need to kind of create your own custom object with the name accounts. So that would look something like, you can name it like, for example, you're working for any company. Okay, you can name it as like ABC underscore accounts or some other name. It's up to you, whatever name you want to give, right? You can give that, and you can have a different accounts object to store the information which is relevant for your business case, right? Now these objects will have some API names. These objects will have some API names, and the note is whenever we are doing integration, we need to refer their API name. Each object which we have in place will have a corresponding API name, right? And whenever we are doing integration, we have to refer their API name. Okay. So right now, when I'm saying accounts will have its own API name, right? Leads will have its API name. So we have to refer to their API names, right? That is what we are interested in. Okay, this is important. Another important note is each object will have n number of fields. Okay, when I say n number of fields, these are more like columns, right? When you have a table, you have different columns, right? So each object will have n number of fields. Okay, now these fields can be either standard fields or custom fields. So what I'm trying to say is that you have two types of object, standard object and a custom object. And in these objects, you can have two types of fields, standard fields or custom fields, right? Now, a lot of people assume that standard objects will have standard fields, right? Which is correct, but standard objects can have custom fields also. Similarly, custom objects will definitely have a lot of custom fields, but it by default will have some standard fields also. The only thing which is going to be different is in standard objects, we may have more standard fields and less custom fields, but again, that is not also mandatory. And in the custom objects, we may have more custom fields and then lesser standard fields, but you will have both the flavors in both the types of objects. Another important note is each field will have two names. One is called as a label name and another is called as a field name. Field name is more like an API name of the field. So label name means the one which you see on the UI. But in the backend, what is the corresponding name of that field is important for us because we are always interested in the API names of the objects, API names of the fields, because that is what we will use while doing the integration. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay. So now what we do is we go back here. So we can see different objects, right? Let's say accounts. And I want to create a new account. All right. So let's say I give a account name of testing Boomi account, something like that. And you have a lot of fields, right? You have rating, you have phone number, you have a parent account. Now, what do you mean by parent account? So there can be some relationships also, right? And because these objects will make only more sense when we have relationships among different objects. So we can have relationships among different objects. So how do you establish the relationships in the database world?
Using host and port.
Using
Host
Primary key and primary key and foreign key.
keys, we can use the keys. So you typically use some keys, right? Primary key, foreign key, kind of concept to establish the relationship between two or more objects. So here also we can establish similar relationships. So the point I am trying to say is that, you know, when you go to the fields, these fields will have some data types also, right? So the data types of Boomi are, oh sorry, the data types of Salesforce are little different from your conventional data types. I mean, you might see some data types like pick list. What is the meaning of pick list? It is like a drop down. Okay, it is like a drop down. You might see a data type like currency, which means you can store only some amount or money in different currencies like USD, INR, Australian dollar, Singapore USD. So then you might see some data type called as lookup. So whenever you see this kind of a data type lookup, that means it is kind of a, this is the field which is helping in establishing a parent-child kind of relationship. Okay, lookup means, what is the meaning of lookup? If you anywhere you see lookup data type, that means this particular field is helping in establishing a relationship between two different objects. Okay, there is another data type called as master child. That is also helpful in establishing a parent-child relationship. Okay, so you can read more about it. Generally, you know, Salesforce team will help you to know all these things. But what I've observed in my experiences, if you know, if you have a fair idea about all these things, then you can collaborate with the other teams better, and you can understand few things easier, right? Because sometimes what happens is they assume that you know this. They might assume that you know the picklist data type, but you may not know. You are not a Salesforce guy, but that is a gap. So people do not go at the root level and explain you things, and then you will be always confused. So if you yourself has some idea about these few things, then your life becomes a little easier when you're doing the integrations. Ideally, they should provide you all this information, but it does not happen in many of the projects. So what we were doing is we were trying to create an account, and if you see, there are a lot of fields, but right now I will just populate the mandatory fields, that's all. Okay, so there was only one mandatory field, and that was account name, and I will hit save. So do you see a new account has been created? So when you see, this is an account with the name testing Boomi account, there is a type field, phone field, website, everything is empty for now. And then you will see something called as related. Yes. So related means this account has a relationship with contacts, opportunities, cases. Right now, we have not established any relationship, but it can have. Then there is details, right? That will give you the account details. Okay. So the point I'm trying to say is this is how you can create the account. And what is expected from Boomi is the expectation from Boomi might be that, let's say somebody comes on your website and gets registered, you might want to create a Salesforce account for that individual over here, right? So let's say maybe you have a app given to any your salesperson, right? Maybe you have given some mobile app, and they enter the details of a customer in that mobile app. Then let's say Boomi is the integration platform, the same account details gets created over here in the Salesforce. Or else other use case might be that whatever accounts are getting created in the Salesforce, you might want to push those accounts detail in your data warehouse also, right? So you might sometimes you might want to push the data to the Salesforce. In other cases, you might want to pull the data from the Salesforce. Either ways, it is possible. Now, this accounts is a standard object or a custom object. How do we know that? Okay, it's not that I told you that it is a standard object, so you can assume it is a standard object. There must be some mechanism which helps you to understand which of these objects are standard objects, right? And how do you create custom objects and all? I'm not going to talk about that, but you can explore that. It's quite easy. Okay, so what we can do is we will go here, not here. We'll go to this gear icon. Okay, we'll go to this gear icon, and here there is something called as setup. So I told you there are two views for Salesforce right now. Which view are we in? Classic view or lightning view?
Lightning.
If you see here, what is it this URL saying?
Lightning.
Lightning. And if you want to switch to the classic, Salesforce Classic, do you see an option? Switch to Salesforce Classic. Okay, so these are two different experiences. So this is relatively old experience, and this lightning experience is a relatively new experience. All right, so we'll go back to the gear icon setup. So when you go to the setup, here, can you see something like object manager? All right, so we are in the object manager. As the name suggests, it is going to help you to the manage the objects. Can you see there is a type standard object? Yes. So account is which type of object? Standard object or a custom object?
Standard.
And what is the API name?
Account.
Account. So a lot of times what happens is we will start assuming that the label and the API names will be same, but that may not be always true. So if you see here, in these labels, do you have some spaces? Alternative space, payment space, method. But in the API names, do you have spaces?
No.
No, right? And even if you will see further, you might see some examples where the API name and the label name might be having significant differences. Okay, so generally the tendency is we try to keep it more or less same, but again, these might change. Okay, so what you have to focus on is the API name, and this is the way you can get to see which of the objects are standard objects and which are custom objects. So right now, this is a new account which I created. I think all of these objects are standard object, right? So if you have an option of create, can you see you have an option to create custom object?
Yes.
Yes. Now within this object, let's say I go to the account object. Okay, so can you see there is something called as fields and relationships? Okay, so when you go to the fields and relationships, can you see the field label and the field name? So when we are doing integration, do we need to focus on the label or the names?
Label.
We don't have to focus on the labels, we have to focus on names. So label is something, see, label is something which you will get to see over here. So if you go to this account, okay, if you go to this account, can you see here the label is account name, but what is the data which we have at the backend, or what is the field name? So when you're doing the integration, you will get to see the field names and you will not get to see the label names, right? So if you observe the data types also, maybe earlier you might not have seen the name data type, but this is a kind of a different data type which we have in the Salesforce, right? Now, if you see the owner ID, what is the data type? Lookup. What does lookup means?
It's referring something.
Parent child.
So there is some kind of a parent-child relationship right? And that parent-child relationship is there for account owner. So if you go back here, do you see this account owner? What is account owner you are seeing? Sumit Agarwal, right? But this Sumit Agarwal, if you open in the new tab, this is coming from a different object. Yes or no? Here we have the name, the company name, the email ID, and blah blah stuff, right? So this is coming from a different object that is nothing but your user object, and that user object data is getting populated over here. Yes. So there is a parent-child relationship or not? There,
Yes.
there is, right? There is parent-child relationship, and the data which is there in the user object is getting populated over here, right? And yeah, but now you have to understand another very important thing. So as a user, you might feel in the account owner, what is stored? Sumit Agarwal is stored, right? But that is not the case. Okay, internally, that is not the case. So I just want to make you understand there is another important tool called as Workbench. Okay, so Workbench, Salesforce, you can type, you can click on this, okay, and you can just log in with Salesforce. I will say allow. So what I'm using Workbench Salesforce. This will help you to, do certain operations. So there is something called as SOQL query, SOQL query, which is called as Salesforce Object Query Language. Okay, there is a, you might have heard of SQL, right? Structured query language, right? There is something like SOQL, which is called as Salesforce Object Query Language. And here you can select the object. So let's say I want to play around with which object? Account object. And I will say select, right? So now here, just understand this. This is the account which I created, right? What is the field name for the account owner? What is that? How can we see that? Owner ID? Yes or no? So I will go here and I'll select owner ID. So what is this? Select owner ID from account, right? Select owner ID from accounts. Which account do we need to see? The one which has the name as testing Boomi account. Yes. So I can write a filter. A filter will be on what field? Name, right? So do you see it is automatically creating a query for you? So now when you try to fetch the value of the column owner ID, do you see the name Sumit Agarwal? No, right? But you see some ID. And this ID, if you hover over this ID, there's an option called as view in Salesforce. So I'll click on this view in Salesforce. So this ID is again opening the details of Sumit Agarwal user. So the point I'm trying to convey you is that each record you create in Salesforce, right, regardless of the object, each record you create in Salesforce, this is a very, very important note. Each record we create in Salesforce, it will have a unique record ID. Okay. Each record we create in Salesforce will have a unique record ID. All the relationships among different objects are established with the help of these record IDs itself. What does that mean? That means that whatever you see here is nothing but the record ID of which object? Which
Account.
object?
Account.
No, it is the record ID of the user object. In the user object, there will be a record ID which is equivalent to what we see over here, and that record ID equivalent name is Sumit Agarwal. So let's say I take this record ID, okay, and I will look for another object with the name as user. In this, what I'll try to search is name. I will select name from the user where ID is equal to this. Guys, please be on mute. There are a lot of disturbance which is coming from the background. Okay, so now what you have to understand is another important note is, what is another important note? All the record IDs are stored in which column? Are stored in ID column. So there is a standard column with the name ID. So in each and every object in Salesforce, there is a standard column called as ID, right? And in that ID column, you will find your record ID, right? So I will just select name from user where ID is equal to this. Can you see the name is Sumit Agarwal? And that's why you see the same name over here. Yes or no? So the point I'm trying to say is when you hover over this, this is a lookup happening on a different object, so that relationships internally happens with the help of record IDs, right? And that record ID will be of the corresponding object. Even when you created some this account, right? You created one account. For this account also there is a unique ID. For this account also there is a unique ID. Where can you find this unique ID corresponding to this new account which we created, testing Boomi account? You can find in the URL itself. Can you see there is a unique ID? Yeah. Can you see there is a unique ID with the name?
Yes.
So if you copy this, you go back to workbench. Now which object we need to get into? Account object. What should be my query? If I want to pull the data corresponding to this ID.
ID equals.
So I can select any of the columns, right? So for now, just I'll select name. Okay, you can select so many columns are there. Select name from account where ID equivalent to this, and you run a query. Can you see testing Boomi account? So what I'm trying to say is if you read the notes properly, whatever I've given over here, each record we create in Salesforce will have a unique record ID. All the relationships among different objects are established with the help of this record ID itself. And all the record IDs are stored in which column? ID column. Yes.
Yes.
Any questions, guys, so far? So these are the few things which I wanted you to be aware of. Okay, we will see few more things once we, start doing some integrations. Some of you might be confused, which is fine. Once we will do some integrations, you will understand, right? So let's say we want to pull some data. Maybe this is the account information which we want to pull and we want to push it into the database, right? Right. So first of all, we'll see that how to pull this accounts information from Salesforce and how can we push it into the database. All right. Any questions, guys, from anyone? All right. So let's move back over here. So I will get back to the process which we were working on. So we were there in this folder. Which one? which is a folder, this one, right? Dell Boomi April 2021 batch. So this is another folder we created. I'll create another folder, let's say. So whenever you're working on Salesforce, some people denote Salesforce as SF. Some people will write SFDC, right? SFDC means salesforce.com and SF means Salesforce. So I will just name a folder Salesforce integration. Okay, so all the integrations related to the SFDC, we'll try to put it over here. And in this, I'll start with a new component, and that new component is process, right? So first of all, we will just go take some baby steps. First, we just want to read accounts data. That's all. Okay. What we do with this accounts data is secondary. First, we want to get into a state where we are able to read some accounts data from Salesforce, right? So I'll start with a start shape of no data type. I'll just add a try catch as usual. So now to pull the data from the Salesforce, we need some connector, right? Which connector can that be? So let me see, do we have any connector for Salesforce? Yes. So you have multiple connectors, right? So this is the one which is used to connect with the CRM. You have Salesforce connector. What is the action you are trying to perform? You're trying to get the data or send the data?
Get the data.
Get the data.
Get the data, right? And then there is a connection. So in connection, you see there is a URL which is there by default. If let's say you are, so I will just name this connection like something like SFDC. Okay. Now let me ask you this. If we were doing the connectivity with the Salesforce instance, which is a sandbox, will there be any change in this endpoint?
Yes.
Test to that.
Test.salesforce.com. Okay. Now you have to give the username. How will you get your username? You will get the username, guys. How do you get the username? You will create the developer account, right? Yes. Now here it is asking me the password. Now another important note is only password will not help. Along with the password, you will have to give a security token also. So I have kept a note of my security token. Okay, I'll tell you how to get your security token, and I'll hit apply and I'll save the stuff. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is when you are trying to establish a connectivity with the Salesforce using Boomi Salesforce connector, you have to give the username and you have to give the password. And along with the password, you might need to concatenate the security token. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, let's say your password is 123. Okay, 123, and your security token is this. So what you will add in the password is this one. Your password concatenated with security token. Okay. Now, in some cases, security token might not be required. And the cases where security token is not required is when your atoms, when your machine's IP is IP whitelisted in the Salesforce org. In that case, your security token might not be required, or else you will need the security token. Okay, when don't we need the security token? Security token won't be required to establish the connectivity with Salesforce org when the IP whitelist the, the IP whitelisting is done for the machine where your runtime is installed. Okay, now an important question which should hit your mind is, how do I get this security token, right? So let's go back over here. Here you can see the profile picture, and here there is an option called as settings. Okay, you just type security. There is an option called as reset my security token. And once you have a click on this button, reset security token, it will shoot an email which will land in your inbox, and that will have a security token. Okay, so if let's say I click on this now, my previous security token becomes invalid. Okay, so that's why I'm not going to hit it again. But for the first time, if you want to get the security token, just say reset security token, and you will get an email on your registered mail ID with the security token details, and that security token detail needs to be concatenated with the password, and it needs to be entered here in this section. You have to hit save and close. Now, did I get any button to test the connectivity? No, right? There is nothing like test connection button. So for some of the connectors, there is
So,
no option.
excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
While you were configuring the connection, there it is a login only. It didn't change to test there in Salesforce connection.
I can't hear you properly.
Here in URL, it is login only. It should be test, right?
No, because I am using the production org.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm using a production org. If you're using a sandbox, then you have to use test.salesforce.com. Okay, so what I was saying is when you're establishing the connection here, you don't see a test connection button, right? So with all the connectors, you don't have the test connection button, but while you configure the operation, you will get to know whether your connection details were correct or was there some issue. So I'll click on operation. So what is the operation we have? We want to read accounts data. Yes. Now, when you want to read the account data, here there is an button called as import. I'll click on this. Yeah, it is asking me to choose a connection. So I'll go to my folder, and here I'll choose a SFDC connection, and I'll hit on next. So you see it is trying to log into the Salesforce. I'll show you again. I chose the connection which I configured just some time back, and I hit on next. It is logging into Salesforce, right? Which means, so from where it will pull the connection details? It will pull the connection details from the connection which you selected, and the connection which you selected is the one which you configured. So using those connection details, it is trying to pull the information of the different objects, right? And if the connection details are incorrect, then you will see a message, right? Login failed, something like that. But since your connection details were correct, you will be able to log in into this, and you can see different objects over here. So which is the object which we want to play around with? Account object, right? And I'll hit next. So it is saying building the object tree, which means it will list all the objects which have relationships with the account object. So can you see there is an account object, and alongside account, there is a expander for child objects, and then there is something for parent object also. So right now, let's say if you want to pull only account object related information, you can ignore this child or parent objects. In cases where you want to pull the child objects information also, you can select those respective objects. I want to select only account object for now. I'll hit next. And so when I hit next, it created a profile, right? So it automatically creates a profile. You will save all the stuff. It automatically creates a profile. And what is the name of the profile? SF underscore accounts underscore query response. And it is going to be which type of profile? You can click on edit and see it is a XML type of profile. Yes. So what I'm trying to say is when you did all these configurations, right, Boomi implicitly created a profile based on the metadata which is there for this particular object, right? So whatever fields are existing in this object in Salesforce, it read all that information and it automatically creates an XML profile for you. And here at the bottom, you can see what are the different fields. Yeah. Right now, do I need all the fields? No. Maybe I need, let's say, ID, and for the timing only name. Okay, that's all. So I will see save and close and I'll hit OK. Any questions so far from anyone? Okay, so what I've done is, I'll just repeat quickly. I took a Salesforce connector. Here I established the connectivity.
Okay. I want to ask, like,
Yeah, please tell me.
yeah, we took the connector, right? So, now you took the, can you close this?
Okay.
We could have taken in start only directly connector, right? Instead of coming,
Instead of star shape,
no,
uploaded.
not in start date, we could have got connector, right?
Yeah, we can do that as well.
Okay. And another thing, once it is after beyond, means when it is related to deployment, so maybe I'll ask later because that is related to deployment. So
All right. So we established the connectivity, then we configured the operation. And in the operation, how did we do? We clicked on import. We chose the connection, right? And where was that connection deciding? Use the same connection. We clicked on that. We had hit next, right? Using then we selected the object account. Then we clicked on next, and it created a profile for us. So you can see account, and you will see all the elements. But you can select only the relevant elements. Okay, and once you select the relevant elements, and if you scroll here, there will be a operation called as show SOQL. So here you will see what is the query which is going to run the backend. Yeah. So for the operation we are doing, what is the query which is going to run at the backend is visible over here, right? I'll just save and close. Save. I will just quickly add a stop shape right after this. I'll add a stop shape over here also just to complete the flow. That's all. It is not mandatory to do that, but yeah, you can add that. I'll just save and I'll just quickly run the test. So now can I use a local atom or can I use Atom Cloud also?
Atom cloud.
We can use Atom Cloud also. Why? Because we are interacting with the cloud-based application, right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, it runs. We come to the stop shape source data. We see so many accounts, isn't it? Yeah, we see so many accounts because we might have created one account, but there might be some other accounts which are already existing. So you see there is an account ID and name is Edge Communications. There is another ID. So if I want to see the same record in the Salesforce, I'll take this ID. Yeah, I'll take this ID. I'll come back over here and instead in this URL, I'll replace that ID. And if I hit enter, it will refresh the page and it will load the corresponding account details. Can you see Burlington Textiles Corporation of America? So what I'm trying to say is there might be lot of accounts which are existing in Salesforce org, and this data is pulled in which format? It is in XML format, and each account information is represented in a separate document, isn't it? Each account information is represented in the separate document. You can take a look at it once again. Yes. So now I'm not interested in all these accounts. I'm interested in a specific account. And what is the account ID or the name of the account? Testing Boomi account, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm only interested in this account. So I'll go back here. I'll go to the operation. So right now, how does my query looks like? Select ID name from account. But if I want to pull the selective information, how should my query look like?
Select ID name from account where
Name is equal to something, right? Isn't it? So here there is an option called as filters. I'll go to filters and I'll add an expression. And what is this expression gonna be? This expression gonna be on, let's say name, and name equal to what? And there is some expression I need to give. So my expression is, let's say I will just name it as something like dynamic name, or you can give something like account name. You can give whatever name you want. You will hit save. And now if you see your SOCL, it looks like select ID name from account where name is equal to question mark. And this question mark indicates some dynamic parameter. It means some parameter, right? So what I'll do is I'll save and close. Now once you save and close, do you see some parameters over here? Parameter 0 of 1 set. I'll repeat. I went to accounts. I went to filters. In the filter, I added an expression. And I'm saying that expression is to filter out the selective information based on the name field, right? And that name field will get a data from a filter with the name account name. You can give it whatever name you feel like. And I save and close. The moment I do so, I get a parameter. I double click on my connector and there is a parameter section over here. I'll click on plus. Can you see account name? Where does this account name come from? This
operation.
is coming from the filter section, right? In the filter section, we have given this name and I can give, let's say, static value. For now, I can give a static value that I want to pull the information of an account whose name is testing Boomi account. That's all. Save all the stuff, run the test now. So when you run the test, you come to the stop shape. How many documents can you see now? Only one document. Now, can you see the selective information? Yes or no?
Yes.
If you take this ID and you come back here, if you replace this ID here, you click on view. So you will be redirected to which account? You will be redirected to the account which we created, that is testing Boomi account, right? So this is how you can pull the selective data, right? So if you go back, now let's say you were not only interested in the ID and the name, but let's say you were interested in some other information also. Maybe let's say phone number. So you can select this checkbox. So you go to your SOCL, you can see the phone number also got added. You say save and close. Save. Now before I run the test, I'll go here and in the details, I'll add a phone number. Okay, I'll add my phone number, which is this one, and I'll say save. Yes, saved, come back, and now you run the test again. Come to the stop shape. You see a document, and this time you should have another field getting populated in this document, right? And that is phone number. isn't it? So this way we can pull the data. We'll play around with this more, but this is to give you a basic idea about how to integrate with Salesforce. Any questions from anyone?
I have one question. If we want to see account details of two account details, so we can modify that query.
When you said 2 account details, means it was showing you a multiple account details also, right, earlier?
Yeah, multiple, but we want to limit it to like 2, 3. So how can we do that?
So that depends on your condition. If your condition will bring in 10 accounts, it will show you 10 accounts. I mean, when you say 2 means what? You have to give some detail, right? I mean, if let's say the
Yeah,
account,
like we in where condition we have written a testing Boomi account like that. So
yeah,
if we
so
want to,
yes, if depending on the information or depending on your query, even if like multiple accounts gets qualified, it will return you multiple accounts.
how can we do that? It will be in the query only. We have to do that in filter section.
Just give me a minute, I'll show you. Okay, so now let's say I go back here. Okay, so right now I just had put the condition on account name. Okay, so now what I want to say is, let's say there is something called as created date. Okay, I'm keeping it on the created date is greater than or equal to. So I want to pull all the account information which were, let's say, created maybe, let's say, 1 year back. Yeah, or so if you want to pull the multiple accounts information, right? So I'm not writing the name, I'm just writing this one. Or else if let's say sometimes you want to write some more complex one, you can go for advanced and you have an option to use custom SQL also, where you can write your own SQL. Okay, but right now I'm not doing that, but I want to pull the information for all the accounts which were created then a certain created date. So my SQL would have got changed, right? I'll say save and close. And here, this time in the parameter section, I'll not, I'll change the condition created date. What will be the value? So I will use date time, and I will choose a relative date, which is like maybe 2 years from now. Yeah, 2 years from now. And what is the date format? I think I'm not sure which is the date format in Salesforce. Let me try with this, maybe, or this one.
It may be
Okay, actually this date format is not working. I think I'll need to give the XML format.
it should be start with month. First month, then day, and then year.
I don't think so. Hold on. Okay, that's fine. We can check it out. How can we check out? We can go here in this one, and we can pull created date so that we can get to see the format. Okay, I think it got executed, and you will see now all the accounts information which has been created in the last 2 years. Yeah, if you want to see the, date format, you could go to account. Here you have something like created date. So you can say select create date from account, and this is the format. Year, month, date, time, hours, then minutes, seconds, and then I think this is related to some milliseconds and offset. So this is how you can pull, multiple accounts data also. So that will always depend on your query, what kind of query you're writing, and accordingly it will be decided whether you get multiple accounts data or a single account data.
Okay.
All right, so guys, we'll just put a pin over here. I have another meeting to catch up. We'll continue tomorrow from here. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.